This is Everything Business Consulting, episode 75 with David Thexton and Julius Bloom. Today we are hitting the road. We're going to give you a virtual tour around a local business area to give you a bit of an idea of what we look at when we're looking for potential clients. There is also going to be a video version of this episode available at our website, consultx.com/episodes/75, or you can find that on YouTube. Now, why are we doing this show? Well, in order for all of our followers to understand how many businesses are out there and are suitable for you as a consultant, coach, or advisor to work with. It's based on a segment in our ConsultX training called David's Tour of Drury, where David drives around our small local business area, Drury, with a population of about 1,200 people and 200 businesses. Now, it is kind of a hub, isn't it, David?
It is. It's the end of Auckland before it becomes farms and countryside. So, as you probably know, all suburbs started off being little towns, and then they all joined together and became part of a big city. Drury's like that. There's nothing past Drury. So as Julius says, about 200 businesses. So about half of them service the local farming community, and the others service the general population. So it's only a small town, but it's got a lot of potential.
So we're going to have a look at the ideal clients from outside of these businesses, and we're going to see what we can simply see from an external point of view. We're going to look at things like the number of cars there, any activity we can see outside, and we're going to look to see of companies that you may or may not be aware of. So when you're out there driving around, you know exactly what to look for. So let's hit the road. So we are now driving into Drury Village. Drury Village welcomes you on a very nice big wooden sign. Please drive carefully. And I will note that these are photos that I've taken stationary, so we were very careful when we had a drive around. Now, the first thing that we notice when we drive into Drury is a timber merchant yard. David, what do you see here?
Well, as I mentioned, a lot of the businesses here are service businesses servicing the local community, and a lot of them are retail. And your normal pubs and clubs and takeaways and cafes, things like that. But what I see here is a national New Zealand brand that sells lots of timber and timber-aligned products, and it's a fairly old business. And I don't know whether it's a franchise or a cooperative, but I'd certainly put that on my list of people to talk to.
Absolutely, so would I. That's the kind of business, if it is indeed a franchise or a cooperative, when you can normally get in with one owner of a business or branch, that can definitely attach you and give you an in to talk to others. Now, over the road from that, we have a plumbing and bathroom specialist.
Now, this one's a cooperative, and I know this because I buy stuff off them. And I've spoken to them about this, and it's a lot bigger than it looks. Like, it's a lot deeper than it is wide that you can see there. But they're cooperative, so basically they're just buying in with a whole lot of other Chesters outlets around New Zealand, and they've formed a buying group to be able to buy all of the supplies that they've got. They supply to plumbers, etc., to buy it cheaper. But that would be a very good possibility to be a client. I know they don't have a consultant, and as I said, they're a cooperative, not a franchise. So there's, to my knowledge and discussions I've had with them, there's no national sort of sales manager or anything like that. But I'd certainly be calling on them.
They are a B2B type business, meaning that they supply a whole lot of other businesses. So if they can't become a client, they could become a referral partner, or they could just be someone good to know to be able to talk to in the future.
Well, think of all the people supplying them.
Yeah, exactly. On the other side of the coin as well. Now, the next up is a fairly similar one, Active Electrical Supplies. This is a slightly smaller electrical supply business. David, what do you see here?
I see a lot of potential. I happen to know that they are a cooperative, same as Chester's, and their building's as deep as Chester's is deep, so it's reasonably large. But privately owned business, and I'd certainly put that on my list as well.
Very good. Now the next one is the Still Shop. This is one of your favourite shops, David, to get power tools and gardening gear.
Yes, I spent a lot of money there over the years. That is a franchise, but it's a family-owned business. It's a franchise. But one thing I point out here that there, and in talking to the owner, is that there is no Still sort of regional sales manager or sales helper or coordinator or anything like that, which I thought was quite unusual because they're a big international brand, still is. So yeah, I put that on my list as well.
Now the next one is a Honda car dealership. They've got a reasonably modest size showroom and workshop and a big yard and a large road frontage of hundreds of cars. Is this the sort of business you talk to, David?
Yes, I would, even though they are a franchise. I'd never met them actually, but I would certainly put them on my list to talk to, and it's just as good as anything else. The particular area that they're in, this little town called Drury, is growing very rapidly. As I mentioned, it's at the end of Auckland, but north, south, east and west of it, within 1 to 2 kilometres, there's huge housing developments going in there. So Honda have got in there to get ahead of the curve, I would say, and I don't know, I think Drury's probably increasing in population of something like about 200 to 300 per year. So it doesn't take long before you got a town of 5,000.
The other thing to note here is if you're not familiar with Auckland, Auckland is New Zealand's largest city and it's also the fastest growing city, and being at the end of Auckland, this is kind of the area that is going to experience the most growth, or certainly very, very significant growth over the coming years. Now looking backwards over the road from the shop we were just at, you can see an industrial unit with 2 little commercial spaces. One of them at the front is an auto and marine upholstery business, and the one backing onto that is a roofing business that look like they do some kind of long run roofing. Do these look like large enough businesses to become clients, David?
They can be, but of course you've got to cut your cloth to suit, and I wouldn't call them a sort of $3,000 a month type client. I'd see them more like at about $1,500. But if you could rope them both in together and have combined meetings with them, they would be a $3,000 a month type client. I don't know whether they like each other or whether they can work together, but there's potential there. They're always busy, and the roofing guy does a surprisingly large turnover for the size of their little tiny building there.
And that's one thing I was going to mention, David, that some trade businesses can be quite deceptive because they have a large number of vans and trucks that are always out on the road. They can have a workshop that's not significantly, it's not a good representation of the size of the business.
Yes. Yep. That's a Motor Mechanics, John Bernasconi Motors. It's been there forever. It's been there for 30, 40 years. I know John Bernasconi from motor racing, and I will go and talk to them. Like you can get tremendous results out of a motor mechanics type operation. You know that from the one that you work with, and there's always lots of cars out there, but you may find that he's just been doing things the way that he's been doing things for the past 20 years, and they've made no real improvements. So I definitely have him on my list.
Now, what sort of revenue would you expect a business of this kind of size to be doing if you were putting on your consulting goggles and making some predictions?
probably $1 million a year.
$1 million a year, okay. And what is that based on?
That's just based on the number of doors that he's got, the fact that there's always customers' cars outside. He's got about 4 or 5 mechanics there, so you need to pay them. I reckon it's around about $1 million. Yeah.
Okay, well that's a good starting size to become clients. Now the next businesses that we can see just up the road are some more small commercial units. There's a Roma coffee bean production facility, very small one, and I think
it's a cafe,
a little cafe there as well, and then a shed type business.
Shed builders, yeah.
Shed builders.
Kiwi Span is a New Zealand franchise, and I don't know anything about them. I've never spoken to them, but it'd be well worth going and having a chat to them. But what particularly interests me out of these two is this one on the right, which is called Roma, and out the back they have a little mini coffee roasting factory out the back there. So out the front is the front of the shop inside. There's tables and chairs, and you go in there and get your coffee. But in the morning, between about 7 and 10 o'clock, cars are just jammed up on that road there. You've probably seen them, and people whiz in and take away coffee, and they're carrying out 2 and 4 in those little cardboard holders and things like that. But what's particularly interested me is, I reckon, because I know a bit about supermarkets, I reckon that should be in the supermarkets. And they've got a lot of potential. I've never spoken to them, as I said, but that's what it would interest me. Or it would be possible to franchise that and have those all out around Auckland, franchised outlets owned by the guy that owns that. Nice name.
The next business on the left-hand side of the road is a larger plumbing merchant. This is sort of more of an industrial-looking outfit. David?
Yeah, it's down the road from Chester's, and it's I'd never been in there, perfectly honest, but I'd certainly put it on my list. They are a national buying group right across New Zealand. But as I said, I don't know anything about it, but it's certainly of the size that would be on my list to go and talk to.
Now, if you were going to make a prediction, what size do you think this would be in terms of revenue?
Probably $1.5 million.
$1.5 million, okay. Now, we are looking at the local vet, which looks to be one of the oldest buildings around the place. It's probably about 100 years old or something.
Yeah, close to.
Would you go and approach something like them?
I would, because it's just so surprising. You just don't know, and you never know. And he might be doing only $500,000 a year, or something like that, because his rent would be very low and things like that. But that could be a nice little $2,000 a month client. Every business is the same, remember. Money comes in the front door, it goes out the back door, and you're trying to create a surplus in the middle. But if he's got no systems or processes, he's charging too little maybe, his margin on the goods he sells are not high enough and everything, like it could make a fabulous client. And it doesn't have to be massive. This is across the road from the vet. And on the corner there on the right, you can see that yellow sign. That is the accountant for Drury. And he's actually an ex-famous New Zealand cricket player. And I don't know him, but he'd be the first port of call. I'd be in there telling him what I'm doing and finding out who in Drury is needing my kind of services, and pacifying him that he doesn't need to worry about me. I'm not trying to take trade off him. In fact, I'll probably end up using him for a lot of the people around Drury. And in that strip there's an equestrian store, that one with the black horse on it. And the lady that owns that owns about 5 of those, all dotted around Auckland, north, south, east, west and central. And that would be very worth, I'd say that would be a $2 million business, that, across all of those stores. And then next door to it, I think, is a builder. He's that guy we spoke to about that Seat racing car, remember?
Oh, that's where he is.
And he builds high-end buildings for well-off people, sort of $1 million buildings. Who is that?
Now this is Heath Hay Homes, which is a large national but privately owned by a single family, I believe, building company. And when I drove past this, what I noticed, David, is there's a big sign out the front saying "Builders Wanted."
Oh.
So immediately you know that they're having problems with something. That might be the way to start the discussion. You go in there and go, I see you're looking for staff. Are you having problems with them? Is there ways we can automate this, reduce labour, outsource labour? I don't know, all sorts of opportunities. But that's it's quite a large brand, I'd imagine.
Been around for a long, long time.
Yeah, this would be in the tens or definitely the tens of millions.
Yes, it would be. Yeah,
if not larger.
Drury Tyres is very interesting. That's been there for quite a while, probably 20, 25 years. It's a family business. The whole family work in there. And they're quite, what would you say? I believe they're quite approachable from a business consulting angle, because they're always looking for new ideas. Like nearly every blimmin' car in South Auckland's got a Drury Tyres sticker on it. And they seem to be about 3/4 of the way towards being a perfect tyre business. But most certainly I would call on them.
And then driving up the road a little bit, there's a Drury Gym. This is a business that's been around for quite a few years in Drury. And I actually met the owner the other day, and he's only very, very recently purchased this, like literally.
Oh, it was owned by two girls.
It was owned by two ladies, and they started a CrossFit studio as well across the road.
Right.
And then a personal trainer from another gym that I went to, he decided during one of the COVID lockdowns that he wanted to start his own business or buy one, and he approached these two ladies and said, can I buy your gym? So they said, that's perfect for us, we'll carry on with our CrossFit and run the studio over there, and you can buy the gym. So
are they still there?
Yeah, so they're still across the road, and then he's taking over the gym. So he's someone that's new to business, and perhaps he doesn't know what he doesn't know yet, but he would certainly be someone that you could help and start creating that relationship with.
Yep.
Now, driving down the road a little bit, we see a very long building with a bright yellow demolition sticker on the side of it. And there's lots of pieces of building, lots of doors scattered around the front. And I see this as being quite a large company, because I know it goes over to the road behind it.
I was going to say, does it go all the way through? Yeah.
Now, so that's going to be a pretty big company, David. Would you approach them, and do you have any kind of idea of how big they might be?
No, I don't, but there'd have to be $1 million to $2 million, I would say. I'm dealing with second-hand parts of buildings and everything. There's a lot of renovating going on in the Drury area within sort of a 10k radius. So I'd say that would be quite a good business. But what we're talking about is, how are their systems and processes? That's what we have to look into. And are they satisfied with what the business is delivering them from a profit point of view? And is the owner close to retirement, wanting to sell the business? So there's lots of things that can come out of a good discussion with them.
So this is a really, really long building attached to a very big business. Now, judging by the amount of cars outside, there's probably, I don't know, there's 30 or 40 or maybe even 50 cars outside of this plastics business, and there's this stuff everywhere. So this, to me, appears like a really big business who might become I don't know, maybe a $20 million client or something like that.
Yeah, could be, yeah.
All right, now, just after that big, long building, there's a much smaller building, which is quite a large yard with a lot of utility vehicles parked outside. The City Care. What do you think about a business like this, David?
Well, if they've got a contract with the council and they're out there in Drury looking after the local area, then a business is a business, and they're all worth approaching. Like, it's only would be a 5 or 10 minute discussion to find out whether that it was worth going on. But I don't know, what do they do? Do they check water? Are they reading meters? What are they doing? Do you have any idea?
I think they do all sorts of maintenance and care of the parks and roading and cleaning stuff.
Yeah.
So that would be, I think, a reasonably sized operation.
And there's 3 little businesses on either side here. Like there's an online lingerie business on the left-hand side there.
There's a flooring company and
company. There was a printer a year ago down the back right-hand corner. I don't know if he's still there, and I don't know who the others are. But sure, it's all worth going and having a chat to them. It's only a discussion. It's funny, you don't know whether you don't actually know what their turnover is and what their profitability is. Like, for all you know, they could be dealing in diamonds. I know it's ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. They could be doing $100 million in that little tiny weeny building there, or something like that. Electronics, or could be anything. That printer down the end has got some really nice equipment in there. So I don't know what he's doing, but no, it's definitely worth going for a chat.
Now, on the corner of a couple of these blocks is a really large concrete business. They've got some big silos, I think you call them silos, filled up with concrete material. I presume it's the powder or something that goes into it, and got a really big yard with gravel pits in there, and trucks just stacked up on top of each other. There's hundreds of them. Now, this is going to be a pretty big business, but it also it's a local business, and you can tell that because it's got the county's label on it, and this area is part of an area called Counties Manukau. So that gives you an indication they might be a locally owned business. What is your perspective on this, David?
Yeah, you just don't know. It's been there. I know it's been there for a long time, and it could be the owner could be wanting to get out. He might be wanting to pass it on to his kids. There might be an opportunity there for a management buyout. You don't know until you go and talk to them, and only then can you make a decision whether it's worth continuing on.
Now, the next one over the road from that is something that I'm very familiar with. It's a small motorsport workshop, and we've actually been there, you and I, David.
Yes, we have.
We're looking at a small race car to buy.
Yeah.
And I know that they would make a very, very good client, because I've got experience with those types of businesses, and I know they have a lot of room for growth. And also, like we've talked about before, the typical tradespeople that work in businesses like these, they're good at what they do, but they're simply not business people. So that would be one of the first on my list.
Yeah, I agree.
The next building that we can see on the right-hand side of the road is called the Playground People. It's quite a large and quite deep commercial building, and I presume that they build playgrounds in there for children to play on. Quite a few nice brand new utes parked outside, so I don't know if they're sales reps or the owners, utility vehicles, trucks in America. So they're the sort of business that I don't know, they would be locally owned, or
I'd say so. I've never seen them or heard of them being national. Although they probably do supply national. They probably talk to all the schools, city councils for parks and things like that, and they'd be doing new installs as well as maintenance as well.
Now, I know playgrounds are very expensive. We went through the process in my local area of looking to get a playground installed, and we've got a local committee that looks after our area, and they had to put forward to the community some pricing to get a playground installed, and it was hundreds of thousands of dollars for a seemingly small and insignificant playground. So these are definitely people that I would be looking at talking to. Down the end of the road is a cul-de-sac, and at the end of the cul-de-sac is this huge, gigantic gravelled area with relocated and removed houses. So this is, I don't know what sort of size of business this would be, but every time they sell a house, it's probably $50 or $100 or $150,000. So I imagine the revenue and the equipment involved with a business like this is going to mean it's pretty reasonably sized.
I'd certainly go and talk to them. I can't imagine, what their revenue would be, but it'd be in the lots of millions, I would say. They've been there for a long time, and that part of the market is actually growing quite well. There's a new TV program on which is all about removing houses and moving them somewhere. The Prime Minister's husband is the commentator, or the whatever you call him. But it's becoming quite popular. What's that one?
It's an engine reconditioner's shop.
That's an interesting one. I would still go and see them, although do remember that the rebuilding of engines is probably going on about a 30-degree downhill slide, with electric cars getting more and more popular. But it's probably got another 10 years to go, or something like that.
Well, that's very interesting you say that, David. The next shop over the alleyway from them is an electrical motor winding business.
Armature rewinder.
Yes.
I don't know. I know what an armature is, and I know what they do, but I don't know whether they can work with electric vehicles. Like, I don't know much about the engines, little motors that are in them. I know nothing about them, but whether they take the motor out of an electric car and rewind it or not, or whether you can, or whether you should, or I just don't know. But I go and talk to them, they'd know.
Absolutely,
Wouldn't
they
they?
know. And they do a lot of commercial and industrial motor repair and stuff like that.
Not just car motors, like fans and anything that's got some value in it, where the thing burns out and it needs to be rewound.
Now, the next building along is a much newer looking building, much larger, with some nice flash gates and a lot of material stacked up outside. This is, I believe, a commercial truck part distributor, from what I can ascertain from the outside of it. They do truck tyres and a few other truck parts. So this looks probably like it's a national distribution centre, judging by the size of it and the amount of stock that you can see in the warehouse looking from the outside.
Yep.
It's not a name that I recognise, so it's not like a national chain or a franchise or something like that. So again, it's probably going to be reasonably easy to go in there and get to the owner, because that's a very important thing to consider when you're starting these conversations. You want to be talking to a decision maker who could hire you.
Yes.
Anything acrylic.
I know that business. They're actually very useful. They've got 6 staff, and they make plastic things out of acrylic plastic. And I got a job done there last week, actually. It's privately owned. John owns it, and as I said, he's got 5 or 6 staff there, and I've no idea what they turn over. But they make anything that's acrylic, which is plastic glass essentially. They make in there, but I see them that they do lots of runs, like pamphlet holders and things that you put on counters, but they make 100 at a time. So I'd say their turnover would be pretty reasonable.
And that business like that would have a lot of potential if they can produce something that can be distributed on a national or even an international basis.
Yeah.
That's something that could definitely up the volume and up the scale of the business. Now, we're at the crossroads in the middle of the Drury industrial area, and you can see there's a large gravel pit with a whole lot of trucks in it, and that's the local distributor for Scania Trucks. I think they're a Scandinavian truck. So is that a business you would go and see, David?
Well, yes, it is, because it may be a franchise, it may be a licensee model, we don't know. But it's worth talking to them, because if that's privately owned and they're turning over millions per year, then all you've got to do is to make a 4 or 5 or 6% impact on the business, and that's hundreds of thousands of dollars. Those people back there, Interrock, supply raw materials for the drilling industry, people who drill all sorts of things, I suppose. They drill wells, they drill, not so much for oil, I wouldn't say. I'd say it would be mostly for wells.
Now, this driveway doesn't look like much from the outside. You can see on one side of this driveway It's lined with what looks to be a car yard and a whole lot of car yard sale signs. And on the other side of it, it just looks like a commercial building. But you and I know, David, that down this driveway, there's 3 or 4 or even 5 smaller commercial businesses in there, including an engineering business that you use as
I use them all the time.
Yeah.
Fast Track. I reckon there's sort of 8 to 10 grand a month down that little driveway. What you can't see on the right hand side is there's an import-export business. There's a company that makes aluminium joinery. There's an engineer we just talked about. There's a car yard on the left, and there's another 3 or 4. I don't know what they do, but no, that's a little gold mine down there.
Now, coming out of Drury, heading home, we have a block of retail shops, much smaller retail shops, including a pharmacy, a dairy, a bakery, and a little gift store, I think. David, would you approach any of these businesses?
Only if I was able to scoop them up into a group, because they're not very big, and none of them are. The pharmacy is probably the biggest, and then you got a lunch bar down on the far end. But if you could scoot them together in a group, there's about 6 business owners there, and charge them $3,000 or $4,000 a month. It works out very economical for them.
But as individuals, they would just be too small.
There would be, like, you could do group promotions with them and all sorts of things.
Now, there's a rather run-down looking, when was that, in the maybe early 70s, looking motel on the outskirts of Drury. Is this the sort of business that you go and have a chat to?
Yes, I would. When that was built, they were trying to copy the Jolly Farmer, which is across the road, which is a pub and tavern and restaurant. But yeah, I'll go and talk to them, and there's all sorts of things that you can do. As I said, you could, all sorts of things. We could be here all day if we start talking about them. But yes, definitely I would go and see them. Have you got the Jolly Farmer on there? Across the road is this pub / restaurant / holiday park that's been there for well over 100 years, and I was there probably just before the lockdowns, and with my family, and there was a new owner came in, and this is what you got to listen for. And I said, "Oh, you're the new owner?" He said, "Yeah, I've only been here a month. How do you find it?" I said, "Great." I said, "The meals here are really good." I said, "How are you finding the new business?" And then he pulled up a chair and he unloaded on me. And I thought, man, if this isn't an instant client, nobody is. So Jolly Farmer, it's probably a $4 million business, I would say. And within the complex, there's a liquor wholesaler. He'll be worth talking to as well.
Now, David, it sounds like there aren't many businesses that you wouldn't start the discussion with.
No.
And why is that? Why would you talk to everyone?
Well, because one discussion leads to another. Like in that little block of shops we were looking at in Drury, where I was saying they were all too small, I was having my haircut done in the little hairdressers there, and I said, "Oh, what do you do?" And I said, "You own this shop?" She says, "No, I just work here part-time to earn some extra money." And I said, "Oh, what do you do full-time?" "Oh, my brother and I own a building supply company." And I said, "Oh, why are you here?" And she said, "Well, we don't make enough money to pay me wages, so I've got to come out here and get it." And I said, "Oh, how big is this company?" She says, "Oh, about $3 to $4 million." I nearly fell off the chair. And I said, "Oh." And I said, "How many staff are there?" She said, "Well, there's only 4. I was the 5th, but there's no money to pay me." And I didn't go any deeper into it, but that would be her brother's company that she owns half of. I'd definitely be going and talking. So that's why little companies have got brothers, have got parents, have got friends who are all in business, and could be a possibility.
Well, absolutely. Every business you walk in is a potential client, but every person within that business knows potential clients as well, or they are a potential client. So absolutely, we always need to be on the lookout. And if you really want to establish yourself quickly as the leading consultant in your area, all you need to do is get out there and start talking to people around you, just like we've done on our virtual walk through Drury.
I always talk about for example, if I was starting again and I wanted to start consulting, I would make sure that within a month I would become the mayor of Drury. And I'm saying that tongue in cheek because Drury doesn't have a mayor. But what I mean is, I would every single business would know who I am, because there's a post office here. I would be talking to them through their own mailboxes, through the post office, by doing pamphlets and things like that, by putting things under their door, by walking round and talking to them, by forming breakfast clubs and dinner clubs. I would be the mayor of Drury. Every person would know me. I would sign write my car. Now I've got a Jaguar. I wouldn't sign write that. I would go and buy something that was worth about $5,000 to $10,000, and I would blast it with sign writing, so that name of my consulting company and the phone number and the email addresses would be all over it, because I'd be parked outside this business like a roving billboard, and that's how I would get my name around. And the phone would start ringing. Julius.
Very good. Well, let's get out there and get some clients. For all show notes on this episode, visit consultx.com/episode 75. Please leave a review on your favourite listening platforms, because it really helps us to reach more people. And finally, don't forget you can request a topic for the show or have your business consulting questions answered.
You've been listening to Everything Business Consulting with David Thexton and Julius Bloom. Goodbye.